Okay, the last thing we want to do is hopefully will be a little bit shorter is build our controller file. For this simple example that we're doing, this shouldn't take terribly long. So we're going to do that so that you don't have to wait a whole week since we don't have class on Monday, remember? So we don't have to wait a whole week for this to come up. So here's the logic. But before we do that, I was looking at my solution to this. And remember when we built the header? So I'm going to go get the header again. Go get the header. It's in the views. In the header for this, we had a bunch of JavaScript. But only one of my views needs that JavaScript, the form, not the results page. Now that it's in the header, everybody gets it. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Pull it. We could do the same thing legally with the CSS. If we have different CSS for different pages, why would I import the form CSS to something that's not a form? I don't. But this is my website CSS, weights.css. So that one I'm going to put in the header and leave it so that every page has access to it. Now the only page that needs, the only view that needs that JavaScript that I just cut is weights edit. So here comes my weights edit view. And where I paste these doesn't seem to matter too much, but I'm just going to, after I get my header, paste in my JavaScript and say I need all that for this form.
You ever see people make like JavaScript files?
Pardon me?
People just have like this stored in a...
If it was the same for every single form, yeah. But this form needs integer key press. The other form might need number key press. By the way, this is a bit dated, but here I need dates. The next one may not. I wouldn't. If there's a bunch of JavaScript that I need in every single form, then yeah, I could create an include file from my JavaScript. If there was 150 of these, yeah, I might want to create a weight edit JavaScript include file. So I don't have to look at them. It's not a bad idea. I hadn't thought about it. But mine are never much more than 5 or 6. So it's okay. But I don't work real world where there might be 150 JavaScript include files. Sure. Stick them into a separate file and then just include them. No problem. And make a different folder for that, right? Or maybe in your, yeah, I would probably make a JavaScript groups something folder, put them in there. Could do that. And that's how I have it in the other one, so it should work. So I'm just going to save that and close it. And now back to index, which looks pretty boring right now. So the first thing we need, here's the logic. And to keep things simple, I'm just going to tie everything together. And next time, we'll create the cases file. This time I'm just going to put the switch statement right inside of index. Later on, we'll split that stuff out. So my first piece of logic, if there is a request action, this is getting into the next unit a little bit, but it won't hurt. Lowercase if with parentheses, I'm thinking you could have guessed that, right? But how do I know if an object exists? The best way in PHP is to use the isSet built-in function. I can right now say if isSet $action. That says, does this variable exist? But that's not what we want to know. We want to know if the request array exists, and if it exists, does it have an action element? If all that exists, and I always forget the second parenthesis, I'm doing great today. If all that exists, then I'm going to use curly brackets, don't really need them. Then set my variable called action equal to request action. Just checking my syntax, hang on a second. Not done yet. End curly bracket, else there isn't one. Now what do? We say make my action variable equal to whatever action I want it to be, and in this program we go right to the weights edit action. it is possible for there not to be a request array. If there's not, then go to this view first.
Wouldn't the if statement be false even if there is a request array, just as long as there's not an action?
Say that again.
If the request array exists,
Yes.
but not the action inside the array.
Right. Why would that happen? Can't imagine.
Because you call it
Poor
something
programming.
else.
Okay. So that would be poor programming if the request array exists, but there's no action variable. Because I said in the last recording 3 times that every time you go from one view to the next, you got to pick an action or be happy with the default. So the request array should exist. Okay. Or actually, in this case, the question is, does the request array exist? We could almost leave the action off. I've never tried it. It's confusing. This says to me, if the action is set, then use it. If it isn't, use this instead. It's one way to code it. PHP has an inline if. So here's the shortcut. Action equals, and then in parentheses, my condition. I'm just going to copy this. If it exists, question mark. That's the syntax. That's PHP syntax for an inline if. I think it's pretty similar to the other languages. If that's true, then transfer the request action element into that variable. Else, wait, set it. I usually put parentheses or spaces around this question mark, make it a little easier to read. So these two do exactly the same thing. This one matches my pseudocode. This is the shortcut. And this goes at the top of every index page you'll ever create, basically. The only thing you change is that. Assuming you're not Paul, who's not going to name it action, he's going to call it what's next or whatever. Because action is just a variable name.
So then what is weights edit?
Weights edit is one of my choices for action
Okay.
that I'm stuffing into a variable. What other actions are there? Weights results. Which page do I want? Is basically what I'm asking here. Which view? Let me change the name. Which view do I want? Do I want weights edit? Do I want weights result? Do I want employee details, employee list, employee save? Or trips list, trips details, trips save, or student details, student list.
So
It could have all kinds of actions.
the weights edit would be part of the case statement?
That's coming next, yes.
Hey Volker, can you group or make the action variable into an enumeration held with typos?
You're still checking to see if it exists. I don't think you're saving anything by creating an enumeration. Could you? Yeah, I think you could. But I'm going to have case statements. And I still have to take that enumeration apart to figure out which case do I want to process. So I don't think you're saving anything.
Okay.
It's a thought. So I don't need this one. If you want to leave it, you can. If it helps you understand the one up above. Your choice. Now, as Brittany says, it's time for my switch statement. What I want to know is which action did they pick? Actually, is it switch true? Yeah. My case command is going to help me figure out which action it is. Wait a minute, time out. Thinking.
Did you just put action in?
Let's just put action in there for now. We'll change that later. In order for me to see, does it start with employee? Does it start with trips? Does it start with student? I have to use the case two. True. We'll do that next time. Here, once we figured out, yes, it's the weights group, then we just use action. So let's do that for now and we'll modify it later. switch logic is pretty much the same as the other languages. Case, now I get to make up my own action names. But remember, my format is start with the table name. So the first one is weights. And what do you want to do to it? Edit. So there's a case. Gets a break. And then the other case will be weights results. Also gets a break. And finally, syntax is default. We're just going to echo whatever you want to say. Notice I've embedded, because it's an echo statement, I have parentheses, don't need them. Because it's an echo statement and I put quotes around it, I can embed a variable. Talked about that last time. Can't use apostrophes, and then you can't embed. And I don't think you can use print in embed. Nah, don't quote me on that. I always use echo. So here, if I send an action that's the wrong one, I'm going to get a message on the screen that says, I don't recognize this action. And that's all it is. It's just that message. That's it. Just sits there. Do I need a break for this? No. In Swift it is, but you can add it. You don't need to. One other thing I forgot. As I'm developing, I like to do this. At the very top of the page, tell me what my action is. That's not bad, except it sometimes screws up my page. So here's my latest. I'm going to cut that. Go to the footer. And inside the footer, now that's right aligned, so now I'd have to mix it up a little bit here, but I'm just going to park that echo statement in PHP right in front of that. Spell it right. No, it was right before. And this, Brittany, is where I might use a div. And on the author div, I would right align it. Could mix around with this stuff to make it line up. Right now it's going to be kind of ugly because it's going to say action is, and actually it'll break. But now at the bottom of my footer, I will always see what the action is. Before I give this to my user, I won't take that out. This is for development purposes. Because we're going to have some pages that actually send different actions based on what the status of things is. If we're fixing errors, the action is one thing. If we're editing data for a new record, the action's another. We're updating data, it's another. And we got all these different actions that could come out of the same form.
Here's a question.
Oh, boy.
A little out of context, does PHP allow conditional if statement, conditional ifs for compiling?
Conditional compile, don't know. Probably.
Because debugging things, if you put the conditional if debug around it, then you have a variable.
Yeah, but how do I know if I'm debugging on a server? I don't know how to do that. Probably. Okay, his question for the recording is, can I do conditional compilations? Don't compile this if this isn't true. Probably. Don't know how to do it. So I've changed my footer so that it doesn't mess up the top of my page, just messes up my name down the bottom a little bit. That's minor. Okay. Save that, close that, going back to my index page. Now, if they choose weights edit, what do I want to do? I just want to include weights edit. Right? I don't need any gathering of data because it's an empty page. But if I were editing an existing record, I'd first go get that record and then load the page, and then the page's job is to put all the data in the right place. We'll do that later. This is kind of similar to new record, right? So I just need to steal this include statement, move it up there. So now the first time I come in, the default action is weights edit, so it comes down here. Oh, this, okay, shows that page. Done. What if I want to show the results?
Set it some data.
Then I first have to do my calculations. Okay, so at this point, I am going to include, because I'm bringing in actual code. In the future, this is going to change. I'm going to include my model file that does weights. For right now, this is do calculations. That's going to change because we're going to do functions instead. Then once I got all the data taken care of, the calculations taken care of, then I can include my view for, sorry, it's models, isn't it?
Yeah.
Include all my views for weights. Is that what we called it? Weights results? Or just results.php?
So,
Because that's all I did, right? Just called it results. That's the name of the view. Normally I would put the word weight in front of that to help me remember that this is for the weights table.
So what happens if there's an error in the calculation?
If there's an error in the calculation, you will get the PHP error on the screen.
well, but when you keep saying table, are you talking like table in the database?
Yep.
Okay.
Ultimately, that's where we're going. Unit 6, we bring the database in. And so for every table in the database, I'm going to have a model file, a view file, probably more than one view file. And I'm going to have one case here for that entire table that breaks down into mini cases. Okay, so this is what that all looks like, and then we're done. This sucks in a view, this sucks in a view. If my command is wrong, the action is not recognized, I get a blank page that says action not recognized.
We haven't set the action on the weights.
I haven't done that yet, you're right. Thank you. So what he's telling me is on my input form. What does the input form say to do? So we're going back to weights edit. Probably closed it and I didn't need to. Here's my weights edit view. That's my form. What does it say to do? It says to go to the results page. No. Everybody goes to the index page. Here's the easy way. That one you can't leave blank because it does nothing if you leave it blank. So the dot says just go to the current folder, which launches the index page again. But how do I send it an action? In a hidden variable. Come on. Type equals hidden, value equals one of my actions from my case statement, which we call weights results. This turns into a variable, right? Gets plugged into, pardon me. That's now a variable because that becomes part of the request array. So it is an element in my request array called action whose value is weight results, which correlates to that action right there. Weights results. S is all over the place.
Or just results?
Nope. The name of the page is results. The name of the action is weights results. She's getting confused. I don't blame her. The name of my view, the name of my action, they should be the same, I think.
Yeah.
Except sometimes you use weights edit for save, and sometimes you do it for new, and sometimes you do it for update. And so they don't correlate necessarily. There's actions that tell the index page what to do next, and then there's views that tell it what to display, and they may not have the same name. But it makes sense to. So Sheila could go in, change the name of results.php file name to results weights or weights results. So it has the same name as the action, but it's not necessary. And if you can keep the two straight, it's even more impressive.
Because we don't have a folder that's weight results.
We don't have what?
We don't have a folder that's weight.
I don't have a folder called weights results, you're right, but I have a case
Right.
called weights results, and that's what I'm looking for. I probably should run, but if it doesn't work, we're gonna quit.
It works.
Oh, good. But why? So I'll take his word for it, save a little bit of time here. Why does it work? When we first launch from the browser, we go to Unit 3 for you and 2015 for me. And I didn't give it an action, right? Uh-oh. Undefined variable action in the footer. Doesn't have a $sign on it. It's another very common mistake for me. And actually at this, no, I should have one. Where's my footer? Closed it. Guys are supposed to be keeping it up. Oh, I've got action. Why is there no action?
You use space after it?
No. Okay. Later. Don't know. Seems to me there ought to be an action, but this, your action, and then down here, action is blank. Why is the action blank when I came in here? Because when I came in, that if statement in index, unless I forgot to save stuff, that's very likely. Aha! There's that problem again, right? Remember last semester? Oh, damn, forgot to save. Doesn't work, doesn't work. Did you save? Dang. Still happens here. So now I'm hoping that if I go back here and press enter, there we go. There's my action. Where'd that come from? The if statement. I didn't send it an action. I just said go to this folder. In that folder is an index page, so off goes the index page. The index page looks like this. It said, hey, you got an action? No. Okay, then use weights edit. Goes into the action variable. We come down to weights edit case. Display that view, which sucks in the header and the footer. The footer has the action variable. It tells me all about it. And you can see the value of displaying it. If something's goofy, I get a message. If it's the wrong one, I get a message. If it's the right, if it's a legal one but the wrong one, I can look. I like putting it in that footer. I take it out last minute. If it's only in one place, in the footer or in the controller, it's easy to do. Then what happens? Now I'm here, I put in a bunch of data, and I'm going to click on this button, which submits the form with an action of dot, which says, go to the current folder, index file, but hidden inside the form, in the request array, is an element called action that says weight results, which takes me into here, which then plugs in the calculations and then displays them all. There they are, all my stuff. There's my weights results. That was the action that got me here. That's what I want to know in that variable. And then here's my link, and if we touch it, it says localhost unit 3 action weights edit. Now, if you got smart users, they can look at that and kind of find a way to bypass this and go right to weights edit, which they would do anyway. You could jump inside. If the user types stuff up here, they can jump. We're going to add the logic to make sure they're logged in before they start jumping around.
You could also just change the title property on the link and that would show up, right?
That one, no, this is, oh, would that one go away then? No, I think that one down at the bottom always shows up to show you where
Oh,
this
yeah,
goes.
It's not because you're,
Yeah.
it's down in the bottom.
Yeah, it's
left.
down at the bottom telling me where this link goes. But if I click on it, it should say return to the main page. But remember, the source looks just like that, except it's an ahref that says, take me back to the main folder with an action of weights edit. And now I'm back.
If you notice up in the URL, it shows the action now.
That's because we went with a link.
Okay, but a button.
The other ones didn't have anything up there because we were doing hidden variables and stuff.
Okay.
But we sent a link with the variable embedded inside it. So that's basically a get. When you do that link with the question mark stuff embedded, that's a get. And so it displays up there. And so you can see the action. So again, if you have a savvy MVC PHP user, they can look at it and go, whoa, there's a weights edit action. And this was built by Volker Gall down at the bottom. I'll bet he's got a weights save, and I'll bet he's got a weights details, and he's got all these standard. I'll bet he does. And sure enough, who cares? They might break the page by jumping to the wrong one first.
Or just put a button in there that's its own form. Let's go back. Send a hidden variable.
Yeah.
Don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, you could, but then it's a button, but then you could style the button so it doesn't have any borders and any of that kind of stuff. Use a button that doesn't have any button shapes. It's just a button. It's just text, kind of like the buttons in Swift, right? They don't even look like buttons, but they're buttons. You can do the same thing here if that's what you wish. I'm not usually worried about it. They got shortcuts. They want to jump around, go for it. They can bookmark this and go right to weights edit. Imagine it's one of 60 choices. They could bookmark it and go right to weights edit. In the camper program, they might want to jump right to medications. Instead of welcome to campers, which camper do you want? Click medications, click. They could probably jump right to a medications menu. Potentially. So it might be advantageous. But I want one question that I'm going to change this to 11. One question that Paul asked is what happens if I hit back? What's the action when I hit back? I don't think there is one. I think there's a cached page. It takes me back to the cached page of 11. What happens if I show total weight and then return to the main page? Starting that page over again, I'm hoping it's back to 10.
Would be back now.
It would be back to blank if I didn't have all the default values in there. I just put a bunch of default values in there so I don't have to keep typing it when I'm testing this. But normally this would be an empty page. You type in whatever you want. And then when you hit back to the main page, it goes back. When you hit that link, it goes back and starts over again because we said, give me weights edit, starting fresh, not from some old data somewhere. Okay, so that ties it together. We'll review that at the beginning of the next recording to see how it works. And then we still do need to do a little modification here because these, the way I do it, don't go here. They go into a separate cases file because these are the cases for weights. There could be cases for students. There could be state cases for hardware, right? Because this is how much does the hardware weigh or whatever it is. There could be all kinds of different tables. Each one gets its separate set of cases files to simplify. So I'm going to show you how to pull that out. The only other thing we didn't do, I can do this very quickly, going into weights edit. And if I misspell this, now I'm in weights edit, I can refresh that page. That doesn't cause any problems. I just have an action that's misspelled. But when I go, you get that. And of course, you're used to this, so you stare at it for a half an hour going, what? Weights results, that's exactly right. And you call me over and say, you're missing an S, same old stuff, right? You look at this, and then you go back, and you look at this, and you go to the index file, and yep, it's weights results, and you never see it. But you get a message saying it doesn't exist. You go, it's just right there. What do you mean? And if it's in a separate cases file, that just makes it a little more complicated. Welcome, and it hasn't even started yet. All the different ways you can screw this up. It's coming. All right, stop recording.